Hello and welcome to RTO Doctors 30 Days, 30 Tips on this Saturday evening, late afternoon in the Western States. I wanted to have a chat to you this evening about some reflections that I've had over the day today. I was thinking about the time that I spent in Ghana recently. I was in Ghana for a month where I was able to experience the vocational education and training sector firsthand. I met with the regional minister of the Bonofo region, one of the largest regions in Ghana, and we were talking about the governance of the Community Development Technical Institute there and how they were looking to use it as a pilot to try and increase skills development throughout Ghana. It is one of the biggest areas in Ghana, and people come from all over the country to learn new knowledge and skills from this particular school. It, like the rest of Ghana, it is quite run down and doesn't have the money and the expertise to make it the college that the government would like it to. However, it got me thinking about our education and training sector here and what's going on in our vocational education training sector. And I was thinking that for a country that has not got a lot of resources in terms of being able to build and sustain a growing skills economy, some of the things that are missing for Ghana's vocational education training sector are probably to do more with money and politics. And then I was thinking about today how it's those very things that actually have made the difference between Ghana's vocational education training sector and our own education training sector here in Australia. So let me go back a second. Ghana has recently, as of late last year, got a new government in place. It's a government that is committed to skills development throughout the country. And one of their key priorities is to get a significant number of Kayeye, or the people who are known as otherwise as headquarters. If you've ever been to Ghana, you'll see that there's lots of people walking around with lots and lots of things on their heads, selling all sorts of things. And it's the government's priority to upskill those people so that they can have a better life and clear the streets and improve the tourist opportunities throughout the country. But previously in Ghana, politics got in the way of development of a whole range of services and products and tourism. Everything to do with Ghana was impacted negatively through the involvement of politics, and it was known to have been one of the countries in Africa where there didn't seem to be transparency and accountability in relation to finances. And now that we've got a new government in Ghana as of late last year, this government is committed to absolute transparency in relation to financial accountability and the dedication, as I mentioned, to skills and knowledge development and upskilling the workforce. So it brings me to Australia's vocational education and training sector. And in some ways, while we have the money and the resources to enhance our vocational education training sector, we don't necessarily have the political ability to manage that process properly. So what I mean by that is we've recently, over the last couple of years, had a significant amount of vet reform. We've had a whole host of ministers go through the vocational education training portfolios, and Minister Simon Birmingham seems to have been the longest. But even though they seem to have some knowledge of the vocational education training sector, I wonder whether that political interference and whether their reliance on the advisors that they have is appropriate to what the vocational education training system needs. And I say that because I was looking again on LinkedIn this morning, and there was a long thread of people wanting to give feedback to the Minister in relation to the poor performance of the regulator, namely ASQA, and people's experiences. But for some reason or another, the government seems to be closed to taking on board any of that feedback. And I wonder whether or not there is some similarity between political systems that has led to a rich country in terms of financial accountability and its ability to resource adequately a vocational education training sector and the political involvement that it has, and the lack of financial accountability that another system has, but its demonstration of politicians and bureaucrats who are quite invested in doing whatever it takes to enhance the vocational education training sector. Now, I'm not sure that there is or there isn't anything in that particular scenario, but it is something that I've been reflecting on today and thinking about how politics and money can either make or break a vocational education training sector, and you can have both and you can have neither, or you can have one or you can have the other. And either way, whether you've got all of those things or none of those things or some of those things, it doesn't seem to make a difference. So if politics and money are not the answer to enhancing and strengthening a vocational education training sector in Australia, how do we go about strengthening and building and enhancing vocational education training systems in other countries internationally? I guess I'm thinking about how do other countries do it. I'd love some feedback if anybody's got any. I don't know, Phil Rutherford, if you're out there, any of my friends from IVETA, if you're out there listening to this, how do other countries go about enhancing and strengthening their vocational education training sectors so that it is more meaningful and it is more accountable and it is more transparent, and more than anything, it achieves its aims and objectives, and that is to build and strengthen the skills and knowledge vocationally of people so that they do have the skills and knowledge to perform the roles that they wish to go into in industry. So that's really my thoughts and tips for today. Nothing really out there and sort of important for you in running your RTO, but I guess maybe it is important if you do work offshore and internationally to think about those things as well. How does money and politics interfere with what you're doing overseas? Does it impact at all? Is there a better way of doing things? Is that something that you can bring into our vet reform activities here in Australia? Don't forget, we have the review of the National Vocational Education Training Regulator Act 2011. It closes very, very soon. So if you do have some tips from international systems that are working really well, I really encourage you to spend the time and fill out some information in relation to that feedback and consultation process. And let's help strengthen Australia's vocational education training system. And maybe it's not actually the system that's the problem, but maybe it's the regulator that's the problem. There's some food for thought and perhaps another topic for another day. Thank you very much for joining us today, and I look forward to talking to you tomorrow on Sunday, and we'll have another 30 days, 30 tips for you tomorrow. Thanks very much, and bye for now.